6 months after I buried my husband, I saw him standing in a Costco aisle checking the price of canned beans. My name is Nancy Prescott. I am 68 years old. I was married for 42 years. For 6 months, I lived as a widow, learning how to exist in a house that no longer carried his footsteps or his voice. That morning, I was not thinking about grief. I was not thinking about memories. I was thinking about groceries, olive oil, paper towels, the small, ordinary things you focus on when you are trying very hard not to fall apart. Then I heard his voice. Not loud, not calling my name, just a familiar sound behind me, complaining about prices the same way he always used to. I turned. And there he was. My husband. Alive. My heart slammed so hard I thought I might collapse right there between the shelves. The scar on his left eyebrow was still there from when he fell off a ladder in his 20s. His nose was still slightly crooked. Even the way he leaned his weight onto one leg was exactly the same. My hands went numb. The bottle of olive oil slipped from my fingers and shattered on the floor. Golden liquid spread across the white linoleum. People stared. Someone gasped. I did not care. I ran toward him. I screamed his name. He turned and looked straight at me. Our eyes met. And then he said something that broke me in a completely different way. I'm sorry, ma'am. I think you've mistaken me for someone else. The voice was his. The face was his. The man standing in front of me was the same man I had loved, argued with, grown old beside. But the words were not. I stood there shaking, staring at the man I had cried for, prayed for, and buried in an expensive grave. And a terrifying thought took hold of my mind. If my husband was alive, then who did I bury? I stood there frozen while people walked around us, stepping carefully to avoid the spilled oil. Someone from Costco came with paper towels. Another asked if I was all right. I did not answer. All I could see was him. I moved closer, my hands shaking so badly I had to press them together. It's me, I said. Nancy, your wife. He frowned slightly, not in anger but in confusion. Real confusion. Or at least it looked real. I'm sorry, he said again, calm and polite. I think you're confused. My name is Daniel Brooks. Daniel. The name felt wrong in my mouth. No, I whispered. No, that's not possible. I pulled my phone out of my purse, my fingers clumsy, desperate. I scrolled through photos I hadn't touched in months. Our wedding picture, his last birthday, a vacation photo from years ago. I held the screen up in front of his face. Look, I said. This is us. This is you. He leaned in and studied the photo carefully. For a moment, just one moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Recognition, panic, I could not tell which. Then he shook his head. That's not me, he said gently. I've never seen this picture before. The way he shook his head was the same. Slow, certain. The same way he used to do when he told me he was sure about something. I felt sick. He stepped back slightly, creating distance between us. You look like you've been through something very difficult, he said. Maybe you should sit down, get some water. Water. As if grief could be fixed with water. I stared at his clothes, a faded green t-shirt, old jeans, worn sneakers. My husband never dressed like that. He wore button-down shirts even on weekends, leather shoes. He cared about appearances. But then I noticed his left hand. Show me your hand, I said suddenly. He hesitated. Ma'am, I really need to go. Please, I said, just your hand. Slowly he lifted it. There it was. His left pinky finger, crooked, slightly bent inward, broken when he was 15, trying to help his mother fix a roof. My stomach dropped. He pulled his hand back quickly. I'm sorry, he said firmly now. I don't know who you are. He turned his card away from me and walked down the aisle, leaving me standing there, trembling. And I knew then I could not let this go. I followed him. I kept my distance as I followed him through the store, staying just far enough back that he would not notice me. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure other people could hear it. I watched him pay in cash. He refused the receipt. That small detail stayed with me. My husband always took receipts. He liked records. Proof. He pushed his cart outside and walked toward an old white sedan with a dent on the rear door. Not the car we owned. Not even close. I memorized the license plate without thinking. like my body knew this mattered. I waited until he drove away, then hurried to my car and followed him. I do not remember most of that drive, only the way my hands clutched the steering wheel and how my chest felt tight, as if I could not get a full breath. We passed streets I knew, then turned into a neighborhood I had never been to. Quiet, modest, ordinary. He pulled into the driveway of a small house painted a soft green color. A simple place. A small yard. Nothing special. Nothing that should have mattered to me. I parked down the street and watched. He got out of the car carrying grocery bags. Before he reached the door, it opened. A woman stepped outside. She was younger than me, maybe in her 50s, with dark hair pulled back and a relaxed smile on her face. Not a polite smile, not a neighbor smile. A familiar smile. She kissed him on the cheek and took one of the bags from his hand. My knees went weak. Then 2 children ran out of the house, a boy and a girl. They rushed toward him, laughing, grabbing his legs. "Grandpa," one of them said, "did you bring the ice cream?" He laughed. Ugh! That laugh. I had heard it for 42 years. They all went inside together. The door closed behind them. I sat there alone in my car, staring at the house while tears rolled down my face without making a sound. 6 months of grief. 6 months of empty nights. 6 months of crying into a pillow that still smelled like him. And here he was, alive, surrounded by a family I had never known existed. I took out my phone and took pictures of the house, the car, the driveway. My hands shook so badly that several photos came out blurred, but I kept going. When the sun began to set, I drove home. I walked into my house, the house I had shared with him for decades, and sat in the dark. And that was when the thought finally took shape. If my husband was alive and living another life, then the man I buried was a stranger. And that meant everything I thought I knew was a lie. That night, I did not sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the light above the stove turned on, staring at the empty chair across from me. The house was silent in a way that felt unnatural, like it was holding its breath. My eyes kept drifting to the hallway, half expecting to see him walk out and ask why I was still awake. Instead, memories came flooding back. The phone call from the police 6 months earlier, the words accident and severe injuries, the rush to the hospital, the way my son, Ethan, met me at the entrance and gently blocked my path when I tried to go farther. "Mom, you don't want to see him like this," he had said. "The doctor doesn't recommend it." The funeral followed days later, a closed casket, white flowers covering polished wood, people telling me how strong I was, how sorry they were, how lucky I had been to love him for so many years. I remembered standing there, my hand resting on the casket, whispering goodbye to a man I never actually saw inside it. At the time, I thought it was mercy. Now it felt like a warning I ignored. At 6 in the morning, I picked up my phone and called Ethan. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice heavy with sleep. "Mom, is everything okay?" "No," I said. "You need to come over, now." There was a pause. "Mom, it's early. I have work." "This is about your father." That woke him up. When he arrived 40 minutes later, he looked concerned but tired, like he was already preparing himself for another conversation about grief. I spread old photo albums across the table, wedding pictures, holidays, birthdays. I showed him the photos I had taken of the man at Costco, of the house, of the car. Ethan studied them quietly. Finally he spoke. "Mom, I know this is hard, but people look alike. Grief can make the mind do strange things." I leaned forward. "Did you see your father's body?" He froze. "I mean really see him," I said. "Not paperwork, not reports, his body." Ethan looked away. "No," he admitted quietly. "The casket was sealed." My chest tightened. "So you buried a man you never saw," I said. "Just like I did." He rubbed his face with both hands. "The accident was bad, Mom. That's what they told us. It was better this way." "Who told you?" I asked. "The doctors, the authorities, everyone." I shook my head slowly. "Everyone except your father." Ethan sighed. "Mom, please, you need help. This isn't healthy." I stood up. "I saw him," I said, my voice steady now. "I followed him. I saw where he lives. I saw his family." Ethan went pale. And in that moment, before he said another word, I knew. The truth was not something he was hearing for the first time. It was something he had been carrying for a very long time. The room felt smaller after that, the air heavier. Ethan sat very still, his hands clasped together on the table. He did not look at me. Not once. I waited. "Mama," he finally said, using the name he had not called me since he was a child. "You didn't see your father." I let out a slow breath. I saw him clearly enough. He swallowed hard. "You think you did?" I reached into my purse and slid my phone across the table. "That's his house," I said. "That's his car. And those children called him Grandpa." Ethan picked up the phone. His fingers trembled as he scrolled through the photos. The color drained from his face. He knew. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You knew," I said. It was not a question. "You knew he was alive." Tears filled his eyes, but he still did not look at me. "I didn't want you to find out like this." "How did you want me to find out?" I asked quietly. "At my own funeral?" He broke then. His shoulders collapsed inward and his face twisted in a way I had never seen before. "He didn't die," Ethan said. "Dad didn't die in that accident." The words landed exactly where I expected them to, but they still took my breath away. I sat back down slowly. "Say it again." "He's alive," Ethan whispered. "He's been alive this whole time." My hands were cold. My voice was steady in a way that surprised me. "How long have you known?" 3 years, he said. "I found out by accident. I saw financial records, duplicate expenses, payments I couldn't explain." "And you said nothing," I said. "He begged me not to," Ethan said desperately. "He said it would destroy you. That you would lose everything. The house. The business. Our future." "Our future?" I repeated. "He said he was trapped," Ethan continued. "That he loved you but couldn't leave the other family. He said it just happened." I laughed softly. There was no humor in it. 20 years doesn't just happen. Ethan wiped his face. I didn't know what to do. He's my father. "And I am your mother," I said. "The woman who carried you. The woman you watched cry at a grave that wasn't his." Silence filled the space between us. "I thought I was protecting the family," Ethan said quietly. I looked at my son, really looked at him. In that moment, I said, I realized I had not only lost my husband. I stood up, my legs unsteady but my resolve firm. I had lost my son too. I asked Ethan to tell me everything, not pieces, not excuses, everything. He closed his eyes and took a long breath, like someone stepping off a cliff. About 6 months before the accident, he began. "Dad came to me late one night. He said he could not live a double life anymore. He said he wanted to leave and start over. And a divorce would have cost him too much," I said. Ethan nodded slowly. "We live in a community property state. You would have been entitled to half of everything. The house, the stores, the savings, millions." "So he chose fraud instead," I said. "It was his idea," Ethan said quickly, as if that mattered. "He said he knew someone. A man who was very sick, terminal, no family, no future." My stomach turned. "He offered him money," Ethan continued. $50,000. The money would go to the man's niece after he died. He said the man agreed because he was dying anyway. "You bought a body," I said flatly. "It wasn't like that," Ethan said weakly. "The man was already dying." "So you decided who would die as my husband," I replied. Ethan looked down. "The accident was staged," he said. "A minor crash, enough to involve police and an ambulance. The man was taken to the hospital using Dad's identification, his wallet, his license, everything. And when he died," I said, "the death certificate was issued in my husband's name." "Yes," Ethan whispered. The room felt cold. "And the casket," I said. "Why was it sealed?" Ethan's voice shook, because the body inside was not Dad. I closed my eyes. I saw the white flowers, the prayers, the marble crypt I paid for without hesitation. "How much money did he take?" I asked. "About 1.8 million, Ethan said. "He moved it before the accident. New accounts, new identity." "And you," I asked, opening my eyes, "what did you get?" Ethan hesitated. "The businesses. The stores were transferred to me after the death. The house was already in your name." "And my allowance?" I said. the $1,500 a month. I thought it was fair, he said quietly. I thought it would be enough. I laughed then, not loudly, not dramatically, just a small sound of disbelief. For 6 months, I said. I cried every night. I took sleeping pills. I went to grief counseling. I paid $90,000 for a tomb holding a stranger. Ethan began to sob. I mourned him, I said, while he was alive. That night, after Ethan left, I sat alone in the dark. I did not cry. I did not cry. Something inside me had shifted. I stopped being a widow, and I became something far more dangerous. A woman who needed the truth. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. For the first time in 6 months, my chest did not feel heavy. The grief that had wrapped itself around me like a thick fog was gone. In its place was something sharper, clearer. Purpose. I showered, dressed carefully, and put on lipstick for the first time since the funeral. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Her eyes were no longer soft with sadness. They were focused. I started with facts. I searched quietly. Phone records, financial statements, old emails I had ignored for years because I trusted my husband and my son. Patterns began to appear. Dates lined up. Transfers that made no sense at the time suddenly explained everything. That afternoon, I hired a private investigator. His office was small and unimpressive, the kind of place people overlook. He listened without interrupting, as I explained what I knew and what I suspected. When I finished, he leaned back and nodded. "This is serious," he said. "Identity fraud, financial fraud, staged death. That's not just family drama. That's criminal." "I want proof," I told him. "Proof that cannot be denied." A week later, he delivered exactly that. Fake identity documents, bank accounts under another name, call records showing regular contact between my husband and Ethan before and after the fake death, every lie mapped out in black and white. I took the folder straight to a lawyer. She was calm, precise, unemotional, exactly what I needed. "This is not revenge," she told me after reviewing everything. "This is justice, and you have a strong case." Together we built a plan. Not a loud one, not an emotional one. A careful one. We would gather more documents, we would record a confession, we would let the truth speak for itself. As I walked out of her office, I felt something I had not felt in years. Control. I had spent decades believing loyalty meant silence, that love meant sacrifice, that endurance was strength. I was wrong. Strength was knowing when to stop being quiet. I did not want to hurt them. I wanted the truth exposed. And once the truth came out, everything they built on my pain would collapse on its own. I was no longer waiting for answers. I was preparing to take them. I went to his house 3 days later. I did not rush. I parked a few houses away and walked slowly, giving myself time to breathe. I was not there to scream or beg. I was there to end a lie. When I knocked, a woman opened the door. She looked at me politely, curious but calm. The same woman I had seen take grocery bags from his hands. The same woman whose children called my husband Grandpa. "Yes," she asked. "I'm looking for Daniel Brooks," I said. She hesitated, then smiled. "He's in the backyard fixing the fence. I'll get him." A few seconds later, he appeared. My husband. Older, thinner, dressed like a man who wanted to disappear. Our eyes met and the recognition was instant. There was no pretending now, no confusion. Only fear. "Nancy," he said quietly. I held out the envelope. "What is this?" he asked. Everything, I said. The truth, the evidence, the consequences. His hands shook as he opened it. I watched his face change with each page. Confusion, panic, defeat. "You can't do this," he whispered. "You'll destroy everything." "I didn't destroy anything," I replied. "I uncovered it." The woman stepped closer. "Robert, what is going on?" she asked. "There is no Robert," I said calmly. "His name is not Daniel either. His name is Thomas Prescott, and he has been married to me for 42 years. She stared at him. "Is that true?" He did not answer. The silence was louder than any confession. "I buried him," I continued. I cried over a grave holding a stranger while he built a new life with stolen money and a stolen name. The woman covered her mouth. "You said you were a widower." "I lied," he said weakly. She stepped back from him as if seeing a stranger. Tears filled her eyes. At that moment, something inside me finally settled. This was not victory. This was closure. I turned to leave. Behind me, his world was collapsing. And for the first time since the day I saw him at Costco, I felt nothing at all. The consequences came quickly after that. Within days, the accounts tied to his false identity were frozen. The businesses were placed under investigation, and Ethan was taken in for questioning. I did not go to the police station. I did not watch the news. I did not ask for updates. For the first time in months, I chose silence for myself. The house felt different, lighter, not because the pain was gone, but because the waiting was over. The truth was no longer trapped inside me. It was out in the open where it belonged. Ethan called me once from a restricted number. I did not answer. I needed distance, not out of cruelty, but out of survival. Weeks passed. My lawyer handled the legal process. The money that had been taken was returned slowly, piece by piece. Assets were reviewed, documents corrected, lies dismantled with patience and precision. I reopened my sewing room. The old machine still worked. The familiar sound of fabric moving under my hands grounded me in a way nothing else could. I remembered who I was before I became a wife. Before I became a mother. Before I learned how easy it was to disappear inside other people's needs. Friends started calling again. I said yes to lunches, yes to walks, yes to small trips I had postponed for years. I stopped introducing myself as a widow. I was simply Nancy. One afternoon, as I folded fabric in the sunlight, I realized something important. Justice did not erase the past, but it gave me my future back. I had spent too long believing my role was to endure quietly. Now I understood something different. Rebuilding is not about starting over. It is about returning to yourself. Today, when I look back on everything that happened, I no longer ask myself why it happened. I ask myself what it taught me. For 42 years, I believed loyalty meant staying quiet. I believed love meant sacrificing without question. I believed that family bonds were sacred no matter the cost. I was wrong. What I learned is this: truth matters more than comfort, dignity matters more than tradition, and respect is not something you earn by suffering in silence. I was 68 years old when my life fell apart. Many people would say that it is too late to start over, too late to demand justice, too late to choose yourself. They are wrong. It is never too late to stop living a lie. It is never too late to say enough. I lost a husband I thought I knew. I lost the version of my son I trusted, and for a while I lost myself. But I gained something far more valuable: clarity. I rebuilt my life slowly, intentionally, on my own terms, not out of bitterness but out of self-respect. I learned to live without waiting for approval, without explaining my boundaries, without apologizing for choosing peace. If you are listening to this, and you are in a situation that feels wrong but familiar, painful but comfortable, I want you to hear this. Your life is worth more than endurance. Your truth is worth more than silence. And choosing yourself is not selfish, it is survival. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment and tell us where you are watching from and what part stayed with you the most. Like this video if you believe dignity has no expiration date. And subscribe to the channel to continue following stories about truth, justice, and the quiet power of choosing yourself. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is not destruction. It is becoming free.